I've been informed that we actually did, it's next week.
Oh. Anyway, everything you're okay? All right, the committee is the whole, we don't have to speak here this evening. Do we have any department heads that would like to speak? So on the agenda tonight, we have a couple of items coming out of the Parks Department. We have received 2 Great Cover County grants. So I'm hoping that you're going to accept those grants and allow the mayor to sign the contract with Great Cover County. One is for $2,000 for the Splash Festival, and the other one is $2,200 for new signs at Kurt Cobain Memorial Park. And I added late the purchase of the Ford F-250. That is a vehicle that is in the 2019 budget. We did go through the city's purchasing policy and requested 3 bids. 5-star dealerships had the vehicle in their inventory that met the minimum specifications that we requested. One of the other bidders submitted bids for the wrong vehicle, and the 3rd bidder didn't have a vehicle in their inventory available. We would have had to order it. So I'm hoping you'll approve that tonight. I apologize for the late addition, but it was totally my fault, and my staff will be very unhappy with me that I forgot to do this. So I'm hoping that you'll approve that tonight. And I also wanted to make sure that the council knew and the public that if anyone would like to make donations to the city for the museum, that we do have a Museum Fund 125 budget that's specifically for donations. So if anyone wants to donate specifically to the museum, we do have a fund set up for that. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any department heads that would like to speak? Mayor's report.
Hey, I got a couple different things I want to talk about, and so I'll just jump into it. I'll try to keep it short and keep the meeting moving along. First of all, I just wanted to say that it looks like the Transportation Benefit District 0.18% sales tax to fund roadway improvements is currently passing, and it should pass pending unless something crazy happens. So I'm very excited to see that be supported by the voters, and looking forward to putting that money to work in the next over the next 10 years and seeing some great improvements to our transportation infrastructure. I probably stole that from the Public Works Committee, but I'm sure they'll go over in a little bit more detail. With regard to the events of the last meeting, I've received several voicemails and emails, some of them commenting on the event, some of them threatening physical harm or harassment. I know several other city officials, and I know that Mr. Nelson has also received some threats. And I just wanted, and I've seen hateful comments on social media, and I just want to say that you know, I don't think that anybody should be attacked for what happened. I think that threats of physical harm, violence, and harassment are inappropriate in any forum. And I want to say that I completely feel that those are inappropriate, and I would request that people who are making those comments stop and refrain from doing so. I think it's wholly inappropriate and just not acceptable. So I wanted to make that comment. And just to clarify some items with regard to our public comment sections and some information, just to try to avoid any future issue. There are 2 public comment sections during the Aberdeen City Council meeting. This meeting is ultimately for the City Council and for the purpose of doing the business of the legislative authority of the city. This meeting is open to the public to attend, and the City Council provides 2 opportunities for public comment during this meeting. There is no requirement that the City Council provide public comment, but it is something that is done to try to engage the public in the legislative process. There are 2 times for public comment during the meeting, and there's a reason that they're separate. One is on agenda items, and this is to allow people who have comment regarding the items that are up for debate in tonight's meeting to provide that comment prior to that action being taken. and to prioritize those comments so that they are heard and the council can do its business. After the council's general business is concluded, there is a separate public comment period for items not on the agenda for general public comment to be received. The purpose for separating this is A, to prioritize those discussions that are on action items on the agenda and part of the discussion of the meeting. And the other one is if the meeting does go long and there's a need to shorten the meeting, that public comment period could potentially be removed while still allowing for the initial public comment period for people with agenda items and making sure that those items are heard. So that's the reason why that's there. It is a limitation on public comment that is part of the rules of this meeting, and I hope that everybody will respect that as we move through the meeting tonight. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the cold weather shelter and the proclamation of emergency, which I'll be asking to be added to the agenda. It was made aware to me after I had several people reach out to me asking what cold weather shelter options were available during the storm, and I'm calling for the city to open a shelter. And normally I would reach out to the Grace Harbor County Public Health and Social Services Department of Housing and Homelessness Department, which is run by Cassie Lenz, and I would ask, what is available and get that information from a single source and to distribute that out to say, these are the resources, this is what's available, and here's the contacts. In doing that, my discussion was centered around making sure that nobody was turned away, and that if somebody was seeking shelter, that it was available. And there was a miscommunication, and I don't want to say where, I don't want to point fingers at where that miscommunication was, but my understanding was that nobody was going to be turned away. Due to some journalistic effort, I was contacted and informed that in fact people were being turned away, or potentially were being turned away. And I contacted the department back, and they said, well, yes, that could potentially happen. And that was unacceptable for me. And so I reached out to Craig DeBlanco with the Coastal Community Action Program and said what can be done, and we put in place a couple of things. One, we identified what shelters were actually open and which ones weren't. There was some information that wasn't necessarily being correctly shared, and that was unfortunate. And the first night, we were able to find enough shelter space that we had enough capacity that nobody would be turned away for low barrier shelter space. The following night, one of the shelters closed, and we were in a position where had everybody who was seeking shelter sought shelter again, which temperatures were at the same cold, there was not going to be enough space. And so I declared a proclamation of emergency in order to be able to call in police staff and to provide them with security for the gospel mission in order to allow for that space to be opened. That was one of the conditions for the gospel mission to open up that space, because otherwise they were not in a position to staff and maintain security in a way that would meet their requirements for opening the space. We did not have anybody access that space, but it was available. We had several people come down, but I think there was a combination of not wanting to hang out with a police officer all night, which I can't imagine why they would. Our police officers are very friendly people, and then the other piece being there were no cots or bed facilities. It was just a warm space, and I think there were people that said, well, if there's no bed, I'll find other options. And so that was acceptable to me. What was important to me is that there was an option for somebody who was dealing with the issue of extreme cold to be able to find a warm space, secured space where they could rest. And I have been in contact with Revival of Grace Harbor with regard to their continued operation to make sure it's available. And I will be working with several different agencies, notably and the county, and getting the county commissioners involved in making sure that this is something that's addressed as we move forward. I find it unacceptable that people could be turned away during an extreme weather event like this. It basically pushes that concern on on to our emergency safety personnel, our police and firefighters. It takes them away from what they otherwise would be working on. And it also puts people in unnecessary danger, and I find that to be unacceptable. So that's kind of the background on that. And I just want to say that, you know, at this time, the city of Aberdeen does not have any staff. We don't have a Department of Housing. We don't have counselors or caseworkers or any sort of infrastructure or staffing in order to run these types of programs. This is something that all of the funding for homelessness that is received locally is organized at the county level or as private donations to private agencies. And the county's Department of Housing and Homelessness contracts with agencies to provide those programs and services, distributes out the funding, and manages that. And so as the city of Aberdeen, along with all the other cities in the county, we rely on them to provide those services and make them available. And we work as a very strong partner in making sure that that issue is advocated for and that they are getting the support they need from the state and federal government. This is a breakdown of that system that I am very frustrated by, but I am very hopeful that we will be able to address it and that things will be put in place to make sure that it is not an issue in the future. This is not an attempt for the city of Aberdeen to take over those operations or try to take on that responsibility from the county agency that currently is responsible for it. And one of the reasons why the city hasn't done this, at least in my opinion, is were the city of Aberdeen to establish these departments and take on managing these programs, what would effectively happen, and what larger cities do that do take on that role, is the funding that is made available to the county, if a local municipal government creates the same type of organization, they then get their portion of that funding and it gets clawed away from the county. And I don't find it to be an effective use of those funds for the city of Aberdeen to take our portion and then use that money to duplicate services the county is also providing. So that's one of the reasons why we haven't done that. I wanted to provide a little bit of background. I think there was a little bit of confusion, and I wanted to provide some clarity. And I think there was also a lot of interest in, is the city getting involved in taking over these programs? Is the city going to build a shelter? What does this look like? And I think the reality is that at this time we're going to continue to work with the county to prioritize the expenditure of those funds and advocate for their use in a way that we think is best. But at this time, I don't believe the city, and I'm not advocating for the city council to start the process for us to take over that role from the county. I think that would be a mistake. So I just wanted to kind of wrap that up in a nice bow. Sorry for being so monotone throughout that. But with that, I have no further report.
All right. Do we have any non-standing committee reports from any members of the council? All right, with that, that's the end of the committee of the whole.
All right, it is 7:28. I'll call to order the Aberdeen City Council meeting for February 13th, 2019. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Alstrom.
Here.
Andrews.
Here.
James Cook.
Here.
Jessica.
Here.
Gordon.
Here.
Mackey.
Here.
Prieto.
Here.
Rogers. Absent. Rowe.
Here.
Shade.
Here.
Shaw.
Here.
Short.
Here.
Mayor Larson.
Here.
Mayor Larson, we have a quorum with 11 city council members.
Thank you. Let everybody please join me in the flag salute.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the next order of business is the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting.
I make a motion we approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
Second. A motion second to approve the minutes from the previous meeting. Is there any discussion, changes, edits, typos? Seeing nothing, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Minutes are approved.
Mayor Larson, I make
Yes.
a motion that we excuse Derek from tonight's meeting. He is ill.
Second. A motion and a second to excuse Councilman Rogers. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All remember if it's in the charter or just in the municipal code. It might be in the charter, which would be a little bit more difficult, but technically, if you don't attend a meeting, you get penalized $5. And it's
there you go.
it's just it costs us more than accounting time to actually keep track of that than it actually deducts from the paycheck. So I'd like to just change that to get rid of it, but,
I move we don't deduct sheriff's paycheck.
Second. So you can't do that. So that motion is out of order because it tries to make a motion, that would in effect be an ordinance. And so it is out of order, at this time, but, just something to think about. We might take a look at that. I think it might be in the charter though, which might make it a little bit difficult. And so I'm getting a nod from legal that it is in the charter.
I think it's unexcused.
So we will continue doing it, but it is a pain in the butt, because I have to keep track of who wasn't there and make sure that $5 gets deducted. I don't know what that's added up to over the years, but, I'm sure it's a pittance.
Would it be possible to do it once a year in a year-end reckoning?
No, it's just part of the payroll. It was just a comment. I'm thinking it's in the charter, but we'll find out by the end of the meeting, I guarantee you that. Anyway, sorry. Additions and deletions. Do we have any additions and deletions for the agenda? I have an addition. I would like to add under special agenda items, proclamation, which would be 9
I'll let you guys see the meeting.
-B-1 on your agenda. Did I say what it was?
Oh, shit.
For the proclamation of civil emergency. We got a motion and a second to add it to the agenda. Is there any discussion?
Will you please confirm who was the second?
It was Councilmember Andrews and Councilmember Rowe was second.
Thank you.
Is there any, discussion on this item? Not all in favor? Aye. All right, it is added. The ayes have it.
Mayor Marshall,
Yes.
I have an addition to the agenda from the, Finance Committee, for the Parks Department to purchase a new vehicle. That's the 4x4 pickup. That's been budgeted for.
All right, we have I have the report in front of me, so this is a motion to add, from the Finance Committee and the Parks Director, a report for the approval of purchase of a budgeted vehicle. Is there a second, actually? Second. Okay, we got a second from Councilmember Mackey. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right, that is added to the agenda. That will be, under Finance Committee under Finance Committee it'll be D4. All right. Well, and it looks like the salary issue is in the charter. There you go.
City Council Bible.
Yeah.
Big
I think it costs us more than $5 to administrate it, but we'll just forget about that. We wouldn't have to do it because it would just all show up.
Filter man, love your work.
With that, is there...
Ladies, back up. Put your sitting in front.
Councilmember,
Got it.
Jeff.
Just started reading out loud.
Okay, we got a report for public safety and the chief of police for surplus of video camera. I have the report in hand. Is there a second? Second. All right, the motion was second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All right, all opposed? It is added. That will be, under public safety, B1. B1. Do everything there is. Let Joe first.
Apparently I was looking for the charter, I forgot.
That's the City Council President.
All right. With that, are there any other additions or deletions? Oh, and Councilmember Shaw.
Public Works has 2 items they would like to remove from the agenda.
Okay.
Under reports, we would like to remove report number 2. And under ordinances, we are removing the first reading of bill number 19-04.
All right. We got a motion to remove those 2 items. So you got a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right, those items are removed.
Confirming that the second was Jessica?
Yeah. Oh, no, it was Tim Alstrom.
Alstrom, thank you.
And that was the first report, or was that the second report and the ordinance?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, those are removed. All right, any other additions or deletions? Seeing none, we'll move to public comment on agenda items. Please limit your comment to 3 minutes. If you would like to provide comment, please come up to the microphone.
Hi, call me Mike, live here, and talk about a few agenda items, not necessarily in chronological order. I guess the first one would be the proclamation of the state of emergency for the cold weather shelter. I think that's I approve that move. Like I think we tried to call for that last year around summertime. Not for cold weather, but just for shelter because of the high number of people without shelter in homes in Aberdeen. The second item I wanted to talk about was, I think, under ordinances, the river camp ordinance. I think it's the third reading tonight, and I disagree with the ordinance and its premise, but that's probably going to go through. So again, I made this comment before. I asked that you would consider amending it to remove the prohibition of alcohol on that ordinance. And I stated before, there's the amendments to the U.S. Constitution, with the 18th being prohibition of alcohol, and the 21st repealing that. The last item on the agenda I want to talk about is agenda item number 5, which is the public comment period on agenda items. And just basically say that to try to bar comments that don't approve or speak in favor of the agenda items, to only allow comments that are in opposition of what's proposed on the agenda is deliberate infringement of the First Amendment of freedom of speech. So that's what this comment is about, is basically expressing freedom of speech, and any attempt to prevent that or bar that or obstruct that is a violation of your oath. So please consider that when interrupting the comment period in the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comments? Hello.
Good evening. I have an interesting question.
Can you just identify yourself for the record?
Oh, yes, thank you. I'm Liz Roberts from Aberdeen, and I came this evening to speak to the ordinance that got struck from the agenda, first reading of Bill 19-04. So I'm thinking that now isn't the time for me to speak to that. And
If you came tonight to speak about that item, since it was originally on the agenda that was put out to the public, I think that would be appropriate for you to speak now, since you took the time to come here to speak on it.
well, thank you. In reading over the language of 12.48.020 of Aberdeen Code titled Removal of Certain Vegetation, there's a number of edits that I'd like to see in this particular chapter. For example, there's nothing, the first sentence is pretty scary. The owner of any property within the city of Aberdeen shall remove or destroy all trees, plants, shrubs, or vegetation, or any parts thereof which overhang any sidewalk or street, and which are situated on his property or on the portion of the street, blah, 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 blah. This comes after a statement that recognizes the importance and value of vegetation in the right-of-way, and I'd just like to fine-tune this wording so that it really clarifies that there are proper ways to prune vegetation for clearance and safety, and perhaps I could take my specific concerns to the committee, or how should I best follow up?
I think that would be an appropriate way to follow up, would be to bring those to the committee. And I appreciate your comments on that item.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So should that be the chair of that committee, or?
That would be, oh gosh, you guys just rushed me away. Yeah, Dan would be the chair of that committee.
Meet with you and go over your concerns.
Okay, terrific, thank you very much.
Is there any other public comments on agenda items?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm Christina, I live here. First, I would like to speak about the first item on the agenda, the roll call. Every meeting, the roll call is read and responded to by those who consider themselves to be representatives of the people. And while some of you seem interested in and sympathetic to what the people are saying, like we just saw, it seems that the majority of you are not. So my request is this: if you are not interested in or willing to speak to members of the public that you don't like or who don't agree with your actions, please step down from your
I'm gonna stop.
demonstrate your integrity and
I'm gonna ask you to please stop. This is the same issue for which somebody was removed from the previous meeting. A request for removal from office is not an item on the agenda, nor would it be an actual item of the council.
I didn't say that.
You literally just said,
I asked you to remove yourself, not that I do it, or not that there's something else done. And that was the end of it, and I have something else on the
Okay.
agenda. So finally, I would like to mention the public comment period. This period is a time for we, the public, to come and speak to the council. We are only allotted 3 minutes per person. The public is not permitted to interrupt while the council is speaking, so I ask that the council and the mayor refrain from any further interruptions of the public during the public comment period. Whether you agree with what is being said or presented or not, it's just not your turn to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Homelessness, Aberdeen. As a result of your briefing about the shelter, for Colwell, I'm in wonderment that because the county is the driving source for this, and because there was a shutdown of the commission, because they stated something about like finances for their staff or something of that nature. My concern is to be better coordination in the county be made aware. There should be a way to collaboratively work it out that that doesn't become an issue again, because I don't think the city is in a position to pick up and start doing a lot of this stuff, because it's a matter of sustainability. You pick it up, you pay for it, and it don't just stop with one issue. But I really believe that if the county and those service providers, especially the nonprofits, if they can come together and have a meeting of the mind, they can probably get this thing worked out. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other comment on agenda items? Seeing no, we'll move to Finance Committee.
Finance Committee met downstairs in the Finance Department at 6 p.m. this evening, at every council meeting night, they will. So, first thing on our agenda is approval of the expenditures, I so move.
A motion and a second to approve the expenditures and payroll. I'm assuming that was your intent, both items. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Short.
I didn't get to ask my questions downstairs. I'll ask them now.
Okay. I'm gonna, hold on, Corey, do you have the, documents to, we might need a second, but depending on what the question is. But, well, we can start.
The summary on page 1 has $11,485 for the museum fund. Where was that money coming from?
Right now, it's coming from the general fund, and appropriations we made into the museum fund as part of the budget. I believe that a majority of that funding And that cycle is from, the Friends of the Museum and a contract with them to provide support for staff, and then also operations regarding, the museum, insurance claim that will probably be reimbursed, in the coming months. I think 3,500 of that 11,000 is, a professional services contract that is being majority paid by, the Friends of the Museum, and then a portion, whatever is not covered will be covered, submitted to the insurance, and then the remaining 8,000, is related to insurance claims specific to the museum.
Because I assume that this, outflow is going to happen several times more. And, our budget isn't gonna handle that too well.
No, I think there was a lot of uncertainty regarding, the museum fund, because of the uncertainty regarding the insurance. What would be collected through an insurance, settlement, and also what those expenses with that process would look like, and also what recommendations would come to council from the newly formed museum board. So I fully expect there to probably be a recommendation from the museum board, to adopt a budget that would then become a supplemental budget for the museum fund, and the funding would need to be identified and just delivered by council. But I expect that to be something, but these particular items are related to budgeted expenses and insurance claim items. And we, to this day, I believe, we have received $1 million in money to cover expenses, and I think we have another $1 million coming in to cover additional expenses, because we've almost expensed $1 million. As we've gone through this process of administering the claim and doing recovery with shoring the building and doing analysis and all of those things, and a lot of that's been covered activity as part of our insurance claim.
It really keeps going and going and going.
This is a very large claim. It was a very large building and a catastrophic loss, and so this will be ongoing for some time.
Okay, to H.D. Fowler Company, we spent $4,800 on miscellaneous, parts. And you know that I'm not one who favors large numbers that say.
Do you have a voucher number, just for reference? It should be right next to it.
63,740.
63,740, Corey. H.D. Fowler. Yeah, I can't remember that one's for age, so I gave you the number.
Okay, yeah, just as miscellaneous parts, mega lug, ductile iron, dial Timax, a 6-inch wedge, and a bunch of miscellaneous tools. Now, which department is this? The department is 404. Public Works,
Yeah, Public Works 404 would be, water. Well, I believe those sound like supplies for the weld shop. I would imagine most of that $4,000 is the structural steel, for various weld projects. Yeah, that would be the ductile iron.
Okay, Eric Dunford is our consultant.
Do you have a phone number? Do you have a phone number for that? Oh.
I think that our interim finance director has the answer.
So that is we have a contracted hourly rate for her.
Okay.
And that's our consulting services, she's assisting me.
Right.
So she's doing a lot of cash reconciliation for our cash and investments, and also helping with our year-end entry.
So we don't anticipate that this is gonna be a monthly?
No, well, you guys, I believe her contract is up March 15th,
Okay.
and you guys also set an estimate as to what her contract can reach into.
That's
All right, so any other, comment on, this item? Seeing none, roll call please.
Roll call vote for, approval expenditures accounts payable in the total amount of $567,685.56 and payroll in the total amount of $761,331.29. Check numbers 63648 through 63816 and 63622 through 63647. Alstrom.
Yes.
Andrews.
Yes.
James Cook.
Yes.
Jeff Cook.
Yes.
Gordon.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Prieto.
Yes.
Rogers is absent. Rowe.
Yes.
Shave.
Yes.
Shaw. Yes. Short.
Yes.
Mayor Larson's unanimous.
Thank you. All right, back to finance.
The Finance Committee has a report, from Finance and the Parks Director recommending that the City Council authorize the mayor to sign a tourism service contract with Grace Harbor County for funding in the amount of $2,000 for the Splash Festival. I'll move this report be adopted.
Second.
A motion is second to adopt this report. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, it is adopted.
We also have a report from Finance and the Parks Director recommending that City Council authorize the mayor to sign the tourism service contract with Grace Harbor County for funding in the amount of $2,200 for Kurt Cobain Memorial Park. I move this report be adopted.
Second.
A motion is second to adopt this report. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that is approved.
We have a report from Finance and the Parks Director recommending that the City Council authorize the mayor and Finance Director to sign the National Event Pros contract and remit the required deposit and final payment at the appropriate time. This is also involving Splash. I move this report be adopted.
Second.
A motion is second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that is adopted.
We have a report from, the Parks Department, for to authorize the Parks Director to purchase the Ford F-250 4x4 pickup from Five Star Dealerships for the price of $34,080.02. I move this report be adopted.
Second.
A motion is second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that report is adopted. I have to say, as a previous employee of the Parks Department, they deserve that truck. I think the old truck is from 2000, I think it was 2004, so it's seen better days.
Well, let me just add to that, this pickup that we're talking about pulls the, the trailer with the mowing equipment on it. And, if the mowing equipment in the springtime gets stuck out somewhere, they have to call somebody to come help them, because this pickup's not capable of pulling it out.
I think it used to be the water customer service pickup for a number of years, and then it got transferred to the Parks Department. And I think it's the oldest vehicle in service for the city of Aberdeen. I think it's the lowest serial number.
So the new pickup is, which I thought was kind of amazing because of the price, is also four-wheel drive. So it should be able to handle the whole work. So,
Good deal. All right, is there, anything else for finance?
that was it for finance.
Perfect. Public Works?
Public Works met yesterday at 4:00, and, that was prior to the election results, so we also, I'm sure, are glad, and I apologize for not knowing the answer to this, Mayor. What about validation? Did we get enough votes to validate?
In terms of,
We have to have a certain percentage of the.
it's a majority for this item. For
40% turnout in the previous election?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Okay, so, moving to reports and communications.
We definitely had more than 40% turnout from the previous election, though, even with the initial returns.
Good, okay.
We had at least 50%.
So there's a, report from Public Works and the Public Works Director recommending that the Public Works Committee and the City Council authorize the mayor to sign an agreement with Whitland Company Incorporated for forest layout work required prior to pre-commercial thinning of city-owned forest land with the amount not to exceed $3,000. I move that we adopt this report.
Second. All right, motion is second, is there any discussion? All in favor? Oh, wait, hold on, we got discussion.
Just for clarification, I would like to, share that in our discussion yesterday, this is property that we own at Lake Aberdeen and at Stewart Park, and is in keeping with the forest management plan that we, contracted for in the last budget cycle. Thank you.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Glad you guys approved that, because I accidentally already signed it earlier today, and I noticed afterwards that, you guys hadn't passed it yet. So, I'm glad that was all rectified. They just put stuff in my box, and it said, please sign, and I read through, I said, oh, this is nice. They said, well, wait a minute, this is on the agenda tonight.
You sign things with
So,
Come on.
I'm glad that got approved. Anything else from, Public Works?
You are gonna find this hard to believe, but that is it from Public Works.
You know, I think this might be the first time in a while that public safety has had more things on the agenda than Public Works after you slash.
Put on the recording. So they've gone to the trouble of recording
We'll take it
the
over to
public
public safety.
back in the corner, but not themselves.
Public safety had, and, just to review, what the, fire chief and the representative for the, Aberdeen Police Department reported. Aberdeen Fire Department, first item was, had to do with staffing. And the fire department has hired one paramedic / firefighter this week. A conditional job offer has, been given to a firefighter / EMT with a projected start date of mid-March. And after these two hires, the fire department will still have 4 vacant positions to fill. There was a, consolidated pool entry test, this, concerned Oakway and Aberdeen Fire District 2, March 9th, 2019, written test, firefighter / paramedic and firefighter EMT. The second item was, fire department is working with the finance director on process to purchase new fire apparatus to replace the 2 1994 fire engines. The department's apparatus committee has finalized its work and provided the fire chief with its recommendations. Third item, the fire department is researching methods to better secure their administrative office to improve safety of their office staff. They're looking at an access system similar to that used to enter the finance department. And the final item for the fire department is they want a surplus of Ford Excursions. So they surplus the Ford Excursions, and it was sold to the Raymond Fire Department for $7,500. The proceeds will be placed into ERR for future replacement of the command vehicle, a 2013 Dodge truck. And then the Aberdeen Police Department reported that Chief Shoemake will be back around February 25th. Second item, West County Citizens Academy just finished its 6th session last night with an amazing presentation for the Grace Harbor County Drug Task Force. They highlighted the drug problems in Grace Harbor County and actually everywhere, and talked about the impacts on family and community as a whole. Third item was over the last 2 weeks, the police department has responded to about 1,200 calls for service. Around 5:30 tonight, the police department arrested a woman who tried to rob the espresso stand on, Forestry covered property. And, right now there are, 14 people in custody, which doesn't include the one person, arrested tonight for Robert's website. And, Dave Timmons retires in 30 days. So, with that said, we have a third reading and adoption of bill number 19-01, an ordinance regulating access to the city-owned River Street property, so long as the city continues to allow individuals to shelter on the property. So, I make a motion that we pass the third reading.
Second.
A motion and a second, that we pass the third reading and place in final passage bill 1901. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Jeff Cook.
Yeah, 1 second. So I'd like to, open the possibility for amendment on, let's see, this is section 3, number 7, which currently says, alcohol is not allowed on the property, and it's been suggested this be changed to, open, containers of alcohol are only allowed inside shelters for personal use.
Second.
All right. Is there any discussion, so we've got a motion and a second on the amendment. This opens discussion. Is there any discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that is approved. So now we're back to Bill 1901 as amended. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, it's a roll call vote.
Roll call vote on the third reading and adoption of bill number 1901, regulating access to the city-owned River Street property, so long as the city continues to allow individuals to shelter on the property, as amended at the second reading and as further amended at the third reading this evening. Alstrom.
Yes.
Andrews.
Yes.
James Cook.
Yes.
Jeff Cook.
Yes.
Gordon.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Prieto.
Yes.
Rogers is absent. Rowe.
Yes.
Shays.
Yes.
Shaw.
Yes.
Short.
Yes.
Per Larson, it passes unanimously, 11-0. And the ordinance number is 6640.
All right, thank you. Back to public safety.
Okay, second item is we have, third reading and adoption of bill number 19-02, an ordinance amending Aberdeen Municipal Code, 12.46, camping on public property to comply with recent court decisions. So I make a motion that we pass this reading.
Second.
I make a motion and a second to pass the third reading of bill 1902 and place in final passage. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Jeff Cook.
That's it. So under, let's see, 12.46.050, it currently reads, penalty for violations, when enforced violation of any of the provisions of this chapter is a misdemeanor. And I make amendment to, change that to when enforced violation of any of the provisions of this chapter is a class 4 civil infraction with penalties not to exceed $25, consistent with RCW 7.80.120.
Second.
All right, there is a motion and a second for this amendment. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the amendment passes. Back to debate on bill 1902 as amended. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Roll call vote for the third reading and adoption of bill 19-02, amending Aberdeen Municipal Code 12.46 regarding camping on public property to comply with recent court decisions as amended this evening, changing penalty from a misdemeanor to a class 4 civil infraction. Alstrom.
Yes.
Andrews.
Yes.
James Cook.
Yes.
Jeff Cook.
Yes.
Gordon.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Prieto.
Yes.
Rogers is absent. Rowe.
Yes.
Shays.
Yes.
Shaw.
Yes.
Short.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, it passes 11-0, ordinance number 6641.
Thank you. Anything else for public safety?
Third item is, the Aberdeen Police Department would like to
Oh, we
donate.
skipped over that, was that over? But-
What's that?
Oh, that was, the report should have came first, but,
They did say.
yeah, but anyway, that's fine.
Okay.
Well, this item is out of order, but, go ahead and make the motion.
Okay, so the Aberdeen Police Department would like to donate Panasonic handheld video recorder model number AT-AC130 to the Aberdeen High School Career and Technical Education, CTE, in the Aberdeen School District for educational purposes. So I make a motion that we adopt this report.
Second.
All right, motion is second, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that is adopted. Is that it for public safety?
Oh,
I think it is. All right, under special agenda items, I have a proclamation. I'm going to read this in its entirety because I have to read it into the record. Proclamation emergency, whereas current weather conditions are likely to result in material loss or damage to property, bodily injury, or loss of life if immediate action is not taken. And whereas due to economic and other hardships, there exists a portion of the populace which currently do not have regular access to housing or other appropriate shelter. And whereas available shelter services are likely to prove inadequate to provide shelter to all persons who do not have regular access to housing or other appropriate shelter. And whereas potential loss, injury, or loss of life is anticipated to pose a disproportionate threat to persons lacking appropriate resources or shelter. And whereas this constitutes an emergency as defined by the City of Aberdeen Emergency Management Plan and necessitates the utilization of emergency powers granted to the mayor pursuant to Chapter 2.86 of the Aberdeen Municipal Code and Chapter 3.8.52 RCW. Now therefore be proclaimed by the mayor of the City of Aberdeen that a civil emergency exists in the City of Aberdeen, and the chief of police or his designee be authorized and directed to take any steps necessary to provide assistance and security to ensure sufficient additional overnight shelter capacity is provided and public peace is maintained, and to take other emergency actions to protect life and property as appropriate. The Aberdeen Police Department is authorized to exercise the powers vested on this proclamation in the light of the exigencies of the extreme emergency situation, without regard to time-consuming procedures and formalities prescribed by law, excepting mandatory constitutional requirements. This proclamation shall be confirmed by the City Council at the earliest practicable time, and this is dated 2/11/19, Mayor Eric Larson, City of Aberdeen. So I am entertaining a motion for council approval or confirmation of the proclamation. We have a motion, is there a second? Second. Motion is second by Councilmember Short. Is there any discussion? Actually, I don't think this is a debatable item, so all in favor? Aye. All opposed? I remember that some of these items don't actually have debate. Thank you so much for supporting that. As of right now, I believe tonight, we are expected to go below freezing, so we will be monitoring the situation, and then I believe it is supposed to get warmer from there, and I'll be working with partner agencies in the county to address this issue so that future emergencies do not occur. So with that, we do have an ordinance. I'm going to turn it over to Tommy.
All right, now we have the second reading and public hearing of bill number 1903, an ordinance relating to the personnel plan as it relates to the personnel committee membership and addressing mandatory retirement age, amending chapter 2.52 of the Aberdeen Municipal Code. I'd like to make a motion and open the public hearing. Second.
The motion is second to open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the public hearing is now open on bill 1903. Is there any testimony for the public hearing? Seeing no testimony, I will close the public hearing by unanimous consent. Seeing no dissenting opinion, it is closed. I would like to entertain a motion to suspend the rules, consider the second reading, the third, and place in final passage bill 1903.
So moved. Second.
We got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
No, it's
Suspending the rules for.
Yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, this is the third reading and final passage of Bill 1903. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Do we need to vote on that? The third reading?
The third reading and final passage are the same thing. Yep.
third reading and passage of Bill 19-03, an ordinance relating to personnel plan as it relates to personal committee membership and addressing mandatory retirement age, amending chapter 2.52 of the Aberdeen Municipal Code. Alstrom.
Yes.
Andrews.
Yes.
James Cook.
Yes.
Jeff Cook.
Yes.
Gordon.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Prieto.
Yes.
Rogers is absent. Rowe.
Yes.
Shave.
Yes.
Shaw.
Yes.
Short.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, it passes unanimously 11-0. Ordinance 6642.
All right. Yeah, I just wanted to get that taken care of. I didn't think it was a very controversial item, and I'd like to have it in place before we have, in case we have to have a personnel committee meeting, so just figured we'd get it done. So, yeah, I do actually believe we have, yeah, we have one tomorrow, so.
Oh, you do? No, we don't.
Wait, yeah, sorry, I was gonna, I honestly, you could tell me that I am going to New England tomorrow, and I would believe you until I look at my calendar, anymore, so. One day at a time. So with that, I have no further items. I don't believe there's anything left on the agenda. So we will go ahead and move to the second public comment period on anything. So this will be a public comment on any item you wish to discuss and provide comments to the council.
And please limit your comments.
Please limit comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
And please identify yourself for the record once before you start your comments. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I was very pleased to hear that the transportation improvement ballot passed.
Excuse me for interrupting, I'm just verifying this is Liz Ellis as well, for the record. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. But when the ballots arrived, I know I was like thrown for a loop. Here's this ballot and no background. And I talked to a lot of my neighbors, a lot of other people, knowing that I'm somewhat involved, asked for my opinion. I didn't have enough information to make a vote. I know you all put a lot of time into preparing this for the ballot. It costs money to get something on a ballot. I would just ask that you not take the voters for granted. I wanted to see information like, what are the priorities for funding with this next round? How are decisions made as to which projects are selected? I could see that there was a list of projects that had been completed, but that didn't give me the picture of how these monies would be spent going forward. I'd like to see that in a city with a population around 16,000 that our voter turnout is better than the 11% of the initial numbers, and I sure hope those go up. But I think one way we can get those numbers to improve is by providing more information, more opportunity for voter involvement, and for all you council members who represent a district, how often do you get together with your constituents? Do you have a newsletter? How can people get into a dialogue with you about their concerns, about learning more, what the city's priorities are? I think we've got room for a lot of improvement here, and I'd like to see us be a lot more dynamic and involved, and share that ownership with all of the constituents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Hey, Mike, look here. Let's see, the mayor's report, I was gonna respond to what I said at the beginning regarding violence and threats and calls for violence. I too denounce any violence or calls for violence in any form. That includes taxation is theft. But it also, I find it ironic, Eric, that you would denounce any threats of violence in any forum, and that's precisely what happened last meeting. That you and called for violence to be done upon myself. So, don't know how to take you at that, other than to say it happens all the time. You have people that go out and enforce your will by passing ordinances and saying arbitrary things are illegal, and then you have people with guns go to enforce that, even though there's no victim and no crime. So, as far as I echo the last speaker's comments on informing the public with ballots, and especially ones that involve more theft, more taxation. And even though you may have a passing vote, it's not the majority of the population who reside here in Aberdeen. It's definitely not anywhere close to the majority of people who purchase things within the city limits, which the tax affects purchases. So, to represent that it's a majority decision is greatly overstating the facts. So, okay.
All right, is there any other public comment? Seeing nobody approaching the podium, we'll move to the city council comment period. Is there any city council comment? Councilmember Andrews.
Male voice from the far front corner yelled, said bullshit while you were speaking.
Part of your, job.
That's completely unprofessional.
To preside over the, how the meeting is run, and I think you do a wonderful job, so I'm really second, I wanted to know, so we having discussions about favors for our property and what we're gonna do moving forward? I haven't really heard anything.
So that particular, I think right now we're trying to get through, through the winter and through these items. We've provided permissions, or at least acknowledged, trying to get the wording right. We've acknowledged, that
There are individuals who are there under license by the legal term of license of the city.
there are people there who are there under license by the city, and then there's also people that visit during the visiting hours. Those people under licenses have an expiration date. At this time, there's been no decision regarding whether those will be extended or not, but that's something that is approaching. I believe May 1st is the date. So between now and then, I believe there will be some discussion. But yes, right now we're trying to get through the winter. We're working through processes regarding removal of abandoned items on the property and making sure that we're complying with all applicable laws as we move through this process. But I will say that the population of people on that property is less than half of the original number, and we've made progress. But yes, right now in the winter, I don't expect us to see much progress until temperatures start to rise.
But we are going to make some progress.
Yes, absolutely. This is a temporary item, and I expect to see by the summer that we resolved it. So, is there any other discussion? Oh, Councilor Ralston.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. One of our speakers, Ms. Olson, I appreciate her comments. City Public Works Department is providing information to voters and on the city website about the project. Keep in mind, the city on something like that is in no way to promote or vote one way or the other. It should provide factual information. And so you've got to keep in mind when the city posts that information, be very careful about that. But I think you're absolutely right that it's, I'll just speak for myself as an individual council member. I think I certainly could have done more to support it. I'm glad to see it passing, but thank you for the comments. And I'd be happy to discuss with you because as part of the creation of the benefit district, there's a whole process we go through in the yearly evaluation for projects and moving forward. There's a ton of information that I'd be happy to share with you, and I think I certainly could have been better before this election to let people know what those processes are in place. Because we're kind of, actually, as a council, I think we're pretty proud of that, the scope that went through of how the transportation fund works. So just wanted to make those comments.
Yeah. And I think just to echo that, I know that I was able to reach at least 3 or 4 4 times the number of people who voted in the election through social media and other resources with the information the city had provided. I think actually I commented with Ms. Ellis on social media regarding that. She actually asked some questions that we didn't have information for, and we subsequently provided that information through FAQ. But yeah, this was an item where normally you might see a coordinated third-party non-governmental entity that then is putting out promotion and information, and there's really kind of a limitation on what the city can do regarding, we put information through our normal media channels, but doing additional mailing and other items might be seen unfavorably by the PDC and the auditors regarding using public funds to support a ballot measure. And so I think there's ways that we can improve our communication, and I think providing for better community engagement with answering those questions. And I think there was just a piece of, it was an off election, it was a special election. I think turnout is a function of people who are engaged, but also people that decide that they have an opinion on the matter. I know there's a lot of people that just don't vote because they don't care on certain issues, and I think that's unfortunate, but it happens. And any way we can engage more people, I think, is a positive with regards to getting that information out. Councilmember Jim Cook.
Yes, just one concern I had with regard to that election. You touched on that. It would have been a good faith measure to at least pay the postage on the ballot. That was done in the regular elections, and certainly they didn't do that. I realize this is an off election, but the point being is there is no collection site to collect the ballot, so consequently I am relegated to mailing it in or driving it to Montesano or to Whole Foods. And personally thought that the city could, as a good faith measure, pay for the postage for the ballot.
I don't believe that would have been legal, but the Secretary of State's office budgeted for the general election to have paid postage, and that was out of some special funding that was made available at the state level. I think it would be up to our county. So ultimately, so this is the dirty little secret, is if you turn in your ballot to the post office without proper postage, it still gets delivered, but the auditor has to cover the postage cost. I don't think the city has the ability to designate funds for the coverage of postage on a ballot measure, but the ultimate cost of putting out a ballot, that would be factored into it, and then that cost gets passed on to the people who have put measures on the ballot. So we probably ended up paying for some postage, whether we approved it or not. You will be happy to hear that we are in talks with the auditor about putting a ballot drop box here at City Hall. So
excellent idea, thank you.
And that should be coming up sometime this spring, I'm hoping, as we continue to do the parking lot. Councilmember Shea.
I brought it up to you earlier, Mayor, and I wanted to bring it up to the whole council about our capital maintenance fund. Where are we at with that? We should be getting, I was thinking some kind of document, maybe from COG, recommendations or something to review.
I haven't checked out, we have a meeting next week, I'll specifically ask the question, where, I'm going to talk about the capital facilities plan, so.
Right.
I'll ask that question and report back next
Good,
week, where that is in the process.
Yeah.
The mayor has any information.
That was something that, all the excitement with the finance department that we've had over the last year, I think it was one of those things that got put on the back burner, and now that Corey's in place, I think she's going to reach out to COG and get that process going again. I think COG's probably waiting for us to be ready to move forward, because we were in a position where we were treading water to just keep our normal operations, let alone planning efforts. And so I think we're getting into a position where we're ready to start looking at that again and continuing that process. So I was glad you brought that up. It was kind of one of those things, but out of sight, out of mind with everything else we've been working on.
the why, but then I realized that is in Oakville.
Yeah, I think, the state came through with, just to wax poetic here for 5 minutes, so we can leave it a round number, I'm kidding. The state had the requirement that all, census designated places have a, drop box, and so all the cities and so there's a ton of drop boxes that are supposed to be installed over the next couple of years, but they didn't provide the county with any money, so I think the county, that's one of the many things that the county currently starts considering legal action against the state over, as part of their unfunded mandates campaign, so, but we are moving that forward, but yeah, right now, the nearest one would be, the Grace Harbor YMCA. Anything else? Seeing nothing, we have no further business.
I will be adjourned.
Second, motion is second to adjourn, we are adjourned.
She always jumps on the bench.
8:25.
Can I talk to peoples?
What's that? I'll talk to the people in a second. Can you please? If not, then the other guy from the APD group.
I think, there is a guy in the back, my forward left. It might be.
The guy that was taking the seats.
Yes, he's to my left right now.
Right now?
Yes. Go. I never know. Hey, people. We'll stand in the corner so we can wait until he comes over. Make sure nobody does anything weird. There's a camera in the back. All right. So they have a camera back here today, and they have one in the front right corner. They never film their own meetings. Oh, I can't see your comments, and my phone died. Hang on, let me see if I can fix it. Whoa. It's a shitty council meeting. Talking to the chief. No, I don't know who that is. Better say sorry. Sound like they were playing bingo earlier. We're going to the stairwell?
Yeah.
All right. It's going to be echoey. Forward, there's somebody you wanted to talk to, possibly?
Still on the thing?
Yeah, I'm talking to my friend. It's going to get loud. I guess I could, sign off and come back on in a little while. Yeah, I think you're right. Ladies, not gonna. No, we haven't found out the name yet. Oh, you turned your volume down, didn't you? The most exciting part of the meeting, walking down the stairs.
Thanks, sir. You're welcome.
All right. Alright. You too. Yep. That's so nice. Hi, Sean. Welcome. You're new here, huh? It's not super exciting right now. I'm walking the stair.
Appreciate that. That's very nice.
Hi.
Hi.
Ready?
Yeah.
All right,
Good.
let's go. Oh,
Right.
thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Oh, cold.
Yeah.
Man. That's a mom, the council. That's a mom, the council. Sorry. It's cold.
Still on with them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course I am. I would go. I don't know. I enjoy hanging
point it
out with
towards
them.
it?
I can. It's just really dark.
Do
Hold
that.
on. Hey!
And I'll take it.
Okay. Yeah, 'cause
All right, people. So, not much going on at the meeting, other than us talking at the beginning on the agenda items, trying to say, hey, you can't trump people's freedom of speech. And then he interrupted Christina, but she was done with that comment, was moving on to something else. But then, yeah, they at least did the amendment of the alcohol thing. And don't know why Steve Shoemate wasn't there. I don't know what's up with that. I don't know if it's because of, you know, if they're investigating him from last time or not, or what that is. No idea. But, yeah, it was actually one of the faster meetings. I think it was only like an hour and 10 minutes, something like that.
It's 8:29 right now.
So,
Yeah.
he did, I guess Eric's been getting threats, or so he says, and people put threats on our stuff all the time on the channel. And if we find them, we try to get rid of them, but there's a lot of comments and things, so we don't condone any violence of any nature, including threats, like calling for somebody to be harmed or directly harm someone.
No matter who it is.
But the irony there was that that's exactly what Eric did last meeting, was he's like, you need to stop talking or I'll enforce our policy, have you removed with force. Like, that's what enforce means, like, use force against you. That's violence. And that's what happened. So it's really hard to take him at his word when literally that's what he did last time. And that's what he was talking about, was in reference to that last meeting. So, yeah, you said that somebody responded when my last comment. Somebody, a council person.
So I don't know if you guys could hear it. Probably not, because it was super quiet and it's really dark in here. I'm sorry. I'll be a shadow person. But when Mike was talking, as I was facing the stage on the right side, there's a gentleman. There were two gentlemen, so I can't say for sure which one it was, but a male voice said, bullshit, when you talked about violence being brought upon you last week.
Yeah.
He's like, bullshit. And then at the end, you said something about facts. You're like, what facts? But he whispered it instead of just saying it out loud, which it's not his time to talk anyway because he's on the council. Again, it's not your turn.
Yeah. So the facts, I think, was in reference to the tax that they just passed via a vote. I think that they have enough of the votes for, and was more than the votes against. But again, there's 17,000 people here in Aberdeen. The last official election they had like 2,400 people take part. So 2,400 people out of 17,000 took part, and he's saying they had a roughly 50% of that, is what Eric said. So only 1,200 people. So maybe like less than 10% of the population took part in the in the vote about increasing tax. And the tax is a sales tax. It's an increase to sales tax, which is why I told him, even if you had the majority of the people, of the residents, which you didn't, you had maybe 10% of the people participate, right? But even if you had the majority of the residents say they want it, that doesn't mean it's the majority of people that it affects, because this is a hub. As little of a town 17,000 is, it's got the only Walmart in the region and a few other stores like the box stores like that. So it brings in revenue from all over. People come in from all over the county and beyond to do shopping here, and people passing through going to the beaches. So it doesn't just affect the residents here, it affects every person on the planet that wants to come spend a penny in Aberdeen. So that was my comment. Like, you just don't have the numbers. You don't have any majority of anything. Thinking that you have a majority of a vote gives you the right to steal more money from people is just insanity. So I've said it before that, you know, the best metaphor for democracy, which is, you know, the majority vote wins, is gang rape. You know, and gang rape, the minority says, no, please don't rape me, please don't harm me, but the majority wins. The majority gets to have their way. So I think we're going to sign off, unless there's any burning questions that people have.
Well, I know they want to chat, but they can't even see us right now.
Okay.
Maybe we can come back live later on or something.
All right. Yeah.
I know they're asking about PUD update.
Yeah, we have an update for that, so we might get to the house and then update you there. Okay.
Yeah.
Want to end this?
Oh yeah, I will. I love you all. I'll talk to you later.